Let's talk cacti and succulents. I would say that hands down, it is the fastest growing group of plants that I have in my collection. There is something about them that just makes me want to have more and more of them. Some of these plants I've had for quite a while and others are pretty much new to me. And now that we're coming out of winter, I'm going to tell you how I managed to keep these plants alive and happy, considering that most of them are sat on a windowsill. So that means they do get exposed to a little bit of cold. And I'm going to tell you what my plans are now that we're exiting winter into spring. What is up, guys? My name is Lithius and welcome to Roots Ready. So this is going to be a mini houseplant tour. If I had to get all of my succulents into this space, it would take me a very long time. So I'm going to show you exactly where they live, where they stay, and you can see what sort of situation that they're in. So hopefully that gives you a better insight into these plants. Now I'm going to stay right here. This is my living room. This is where I have a large collection of plants. As you can see behind me, I'm actually going to be doing a bit of a restructure because some plants like this Anthurium magnificum cross regale and the large Anthurium, sorry, this is a philodendron behind me, they're getting very, very big. So I'm going to try to sort something out, do something a little bit different here, but that's for another video, so stay tuned. But if I bring you down here into the belly of the beast, so this is by far the oldest succulent that I have in my collection. Now, it's not a cacti, but it is a succulent. It's a Euphorbia trigona. I've had this plant for a couple of years now, probably approaching about 4 or 5 years when I first moved to this house. So it's been quite a while. So let me bring you in for a closer look. This plant has pretty much stayed in this exact same spot from the day that I brought this plant home from IKEA. And since that time, it's had some battles. So this plant once came down with spider mites, and it was the very first plant in my collection that experienced this, and it was my first time trying to get rid of this. So there is a video on my channel where I tackle this, but since then I sort of got the recipe down how to get rid of it. Sometimes I use neem oil, sometimes I use some other sort of insecticidal soap to get rid of it. But in the winter, this plant tends to sort of lose all of the little tiny leaves. You can see there's a lot of dried leaves. If I flick one off just here, that is one of the leaves that these plants grows. So I imagine in the summer, in the spring, those leaves are going to come back and it's going to look a lot fuller, a lot bushier. But as you can see, this plant seems to bud like crazy. And eventually this thing is going to be a forest just all by itself. But it's a really great plant. I haven't had many issues apart from spider mites. It's been a relatively easy plant to care for. And behind here, this is, if I can remove the fiddle leaf fig from the picture, there you go. This is my blue cactus. Definitely one of my favorite cacti in my collection, and it is a super fast grower. This plant, I think it might only be in my collection for maybe a year or two. I got it and it was probably about half the size of the Euphorbia just over here, and now look at it, it is towering over it. I love the blue sheen that this plant has. I don't know if we'll pick it up. I try my best not to touch it, because once you touch, that blue sort of powdery coating comes off and it doesn't get replaced, and it's actually a form of sun protection that this plant has. I've noticed that this ficus over here is actually pushing onto the plant, so it has made the shape a bit weird. So you can see it's a bit compressed just over here, so that's something I'm going to have to try to sort out. In terms of watering these plants in the summer, I maybe water them twice a month with a good soaking, but in the winter I probably do it about once every 2 months. I really don't want this thing to experience any sort of root rot. So I've got a couple plants on this windowsill over here. This is in my living room still. So it's an east facing window over here. And if you come down here, you can see this cute little cacti that I got from the lovely Kerry from the another plant swap. This is a great little plant. It is a variegated Opuntia. I will put the name on the screen. This plant has been just a solid grower. I've had it in the same spot, haven't had any issues with it whatsoever. So really looking forward to seeing this thing growing. I know this grows as quite like a cluster, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what that looks like in the near future. So the next spot where I keep some of my cacti and succulents is right here. This is the front door. I've got like a little window panel over here, so this is west facing, so great bright sunshine in the afternoon. And it gets quite a few hours of sunlight actually. I'm keeping some plants here temporarily until I sort of figure out exactly what I want to do with them. And I found that they have been absolutely loving this little spot. So this may change from a temporary spot into something a bit more permanent, but we will see. Without any further ado, let me show you exactly what plants we have living here. Now, firstly, I will say that I don't have the names for every single plant here, so do excuse me. This is another plant that I got from the another plant swap event. This one wasn't named when it was given to me, but it was a cut-in. And it seems to be doing fine because it's been alive and well in this little pot, in this little tray. We've got a couple of gymnosilums. I'm not sure if they're all gymnosilums. This one I haven't got a name for, but this is quite a gorgeous one. If I pick it up without damaging myself. Oh, here we go. It is a gymnosilum. I've got the name on it right here. Gymnosilum chin cactus. So that's the common name for it. And you can see we may have a little flower bud just here, that little purple one. This has flowered for me in the past, so I'm looking forward to welcoming another one. This over here is another gymnosilum stiletum. I believe that is one of the letters are rubbed off. My favorite thing about this plant is just the way that the thorns fall over. It's quite symmetrical, so it's quite pleasant to look at. And I also like the way that it looks kind of a touch gray to the color. So you can see this is a brighter green, even brighter over here, like a lime green over here, but this one's sort of that muted gray color that I really am enjoying. Over here, I spoke about this plant only recently on my channel. This is a euphorbia millie, I believe it is, and still flowering. Last time I showed you only had 2 flowers. We've got another 2 down here about to emerge, so that's really great. And over here we have 2 snake plants. Both of them are doing great. They're both sort of growing. You can see this one I showed recently has 2 new plants growing at the bottom over here, and this one is also growing a little pup. So all looking good in the hood over here. So we'll put these plants back and let them just keep doing their thing until the summer comes along. So this is the main event. These are all of the cacti and succulents in my kitchen. They're all taking advantage of that west facing bright, hot, quite warm light in the summer actually. And this is one of the first ones I'm going to show you. Cereus forbesii spiralis, and you can tell that the reason why this plant is named spiralis is because of that interesting growth pattern that it has. Look at that. How gorgeous is that design? Oh, it looks amazing. Really cool. Right next to this plant is my old man cactus. There's quite a few in here. This particular plant just here I've had for quite a while in my collection. This was gifted to me when somebody was leaving work and they had it on their desk and gave it to me. So this plant is quite old, possibly as old or maybe just a little bit younger than the euphorbia that I showed you in my living room. So one of the oldest. And these ones over here, these were from the another plant swap event. So looking really great. We of course have the infamous jade plant over here. I'm doing some work. I'm trying to train this up. I do want to turn this into a bonsai eventually. So I'm just letting it grow. I'm letting it really thicken up before I start to really design and prune this thing so it looks just the way I want it to. This over here is a Matillo cacti, and it is a crested version of the plant. So you can see it's got these mutations that makes it a really interesting plant to look at. This piece over here is quite new. It only came out last year, as is this piece over here. So you can see, again, it has that sort of blue tinge to it as well. So really glad to have this one that I was on search for quite a while. Right next to it is a Opuntia robusta that was gifted to me by Anthony. I made a video where he collects and looks after lots and lots of plants, and he grows them outdoors, which is quite interesting. So really glad to have this one. A super easy grower, I find, so one to recommend. I have this cacti over here, but to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure the name of it. This was gifted to me as just a couple of cut-ins. I'm not sure of the name. If I can find it, I will put it on the screen. However, what I do like about this plant are the flowers. It's quite small, but the flowers are quite large, like a 2 pence piece or I'm not sure what's equivalent in your country, but it's about maybe an inch across, and it's quite a lovely dark flower. It almost looks fake. Over here, can't quite remember the name of these, but this is an OG. I've had this one for quite a while, so that's fantastic. Again, not sure what the name of this one is. I got this as a cut-in when my mum went to visit her friend. Friend gave her these as a cut-in, and I'm looking after them. So not quite sure what the name is, but I think it might be a Christmas cactus. I'm not too sure. This plant has also been in my collection for quite a while. I'm not too sure what the name is, but yeah, this is a plant that has been an unstoppable grower. Thinking about doing something a little bit different with it because it's quite interesting to look at. So if I can pot it up in an interesting pot, it might just make it a little bit more fun to care for. So this is another Opuntia, a variegated variety. I'm not sure what's going on with it because it's sort of stretched out as far as it can go, and even these other pads that are coming out are quite stretched out as well. There's a little baby one up there. The one thing that I will say about this plant is that it will tell me when it's thirsty, because as soon as it needs a bit of watering, the pads on the top start to really wither and they start to sort of bend over and go really limp. So now go in, I'll just give it just a dribble of water in the winter. In the summer, it dries out a lot quicker, but I will go ahead and give it a lot more water during that time. So it's sort of like an indicator plant for me. So this right here is quite a common cacti. So the Puntia ficus indica, I believe it is. This I've had for quite a while, and it hasn't grown that much, to be fair. They're meant to be quite fast growers, but for me, it's tend to be quite slow. Got a couple of pads here, very wobbly, but I don't think they're going anywhere. But yeah, these are quite nice. I know some people grow these outdoors, so that might be something I experiment with in the near future. Here's a Tephro-cacti. I love this is just so unique, so different. Look at the monster spikes on this. Their bark is worse than their bite, because this is not, it's not going to cause anybody any danger anytime soon. But it's such an interesting one to look at. Really do enjoy growing this one. Around the back here, we have a Ferro-cacti. Again, very interesting spikes. This one, its bite is definitely worse than its bark, because wow, these are some monster spikes. But definitely enjoy these. It's such an interesting plant to look at, just even the growth pattern, not just the spikes, but just the ridges on this is just really interesting. So one of the newer ones in my collection, and still loving it. This is, I believe this is another Gymnosilum, but I am probably wrong. So if you know what this plant is, do let me know in the comments below. But wow, how interesting is this? Look at the little spots and white dots. Oh, it's just such an interesting plant. It really is. And it's one of the larger ones as well. I'm thinking of trying to do maybe a little cacti garden in the summer. Let me know if that's something that you think I should do. I know that different cacti have different watering requirements. I will try to sort of pot up the ones that are really similar together. I'm thinking maybe this one with a couple of the other Gymnosilum, you know, just to make it a little bit interesting. You know, planting and gardening and your house plants can be fun if you look at trying to do different and interesting things. Now the last one in the kitchen is, oh, maybe not the last one, but this is another Euphorbia. This is a crested one. Not quite sure which one this is. This was again another gift that I got, and this little piece here is a cut-in from this piece, because it was just sort of growing a bit wild. So I cut it off, I put it in there. I think it's rooted because it's been in here for maybe about a year. But this plant is quite something. Some really gnarly spikes on this, so you don't want to get spiked. I did cut them off actually when I was transporting them home, just so that it didn't damage myself or the bag that it was in. Back over here, this is the Vix plant. This is a succulent. This has some medicinal purposes as well. I believe you can sort of crush it and it releases that sort of Vicks vapor rub aroma, and you can use it, I don't know, for different things, different purposes. So the last couple are just hiding here on this east facing window in my spare room. If I can get this Philodendron Pink Princess out of the way. So these are actually unnamed. I'm not quite sure what variety of plants this is. Again, this is another cutting that I had, and this one is also from the same plant, the same mother plant. The reason why I collected these is because they are crested. You can see again they've got these interesting growth patterns on them, so really wanted to enjoy that. And this is another variety of that same plant that I showed you downstairs with the really interesting flowers. So that's a look at every single cacti and succulent that I own. And you can see on the whole, they are looking very good, very healthy. And I believe the reason for that is my sort of understanding of how to care for these plants, especially during the winter. That could be a time where you could more easily than not lose your plants, and the easiest way to do that is to overwater them. For me, what I've done is I've completely reduced the amount of watering that I give my cacti. In the summer, you do actually want to water your plants. You don't want to let them go dry for too long. You don't want to overwater them. But for me, in my setup and the amount of sunlight that they're exposed to, I have to give them a very good watering at least maybe once a week on the really hot weeks, or maybe twice a month, so every 2 weeks. But in the winter, I tend to cut that all the way back. So with these plants, I'm probably watering them maybe once every month and a half. Some people completely stop watering their plants, completely stop watering it. For me, I like to give them just a little bit of water. I saw somewhere somebody mentioning when you stop watering your cacti completely, what actually happens is all of the roots actually die, and then what that means is that when you start to water your plants again in the spring and summer, it's easier to overwater them because there are no roots to uptake that water, so your plant is effectively sitting in damp soil. So to prevent the roots from completely perishing, I do water them, but I literally give them just a dribble of water. So whereas before I would completely soak the pot, I literally just go in and I wouldn't even wet the entire pot. I'll just sort of, just a little bit of water, maybe for the larger ones, maybe like a cup of water, and that's it. That's it every month and a half. With the other ones, much less than that, but just enough so that the roots are still alive, so that when spring and summer comes around, I'm not having to almost restart the plant. I'm sort of just maintaining them from where they left off. So hopefully the growth is a bit more steady and consistent during the summer months. And for me, I've had these plants for quite a while, some of them, and I haven't had any issues. Some people do just completely stop watering it, as I said. But for some of the plants that, like I showed you, the Opuntia, that is really sort of dramatic. When it needs water, it will tell you. If I didn't water that plant, it would be dead by now because I've had to water it a couple of times quite frequently throughout this process. But that's it. That's how I look after my cacti and succulents. Let me know if you do anything different or similar to the way I do it, and let me know if you're anything like me where your cacti and succulent collection's actually growing. I find mine is still going. I'm still seeing some plants that I really do enjoy and like to see and would love to have in my collection. So let me know if that's also the case for you. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep planting.